The Samaritans and the Hebrews were like that. And Luke, who was a convert to a follower of Jesus, he was fascinated with the fact that people who were family were torn apart. How did they were so close together, but how did they become, what happened to them that tore them apart? How did the Samaritans get to be outsiders? Were they not from the same Davidic line at one time? Were they not the people who were part of the Hebrew tradition? If you go back to 1 Kings, you will read that when Israel divided and the succession of kings left the line of David, the Samaritans were on the outside. So that's kind of where they got separated from the rest of the Hebrews. And then things got worse. The Israelites started fighting between themselves, and an upstart king bought a hill, and on that hill he established his capital to fight the Hebrews. That hill was named Samaria. So the people who were thrown out and disowned were now following this upstart king, and families were separated. So when the Babylonians came through and wiped out Israel and Judah and destroyed the temple, the Hebrews were still at odds with the Samaritans. Oh, they lived with the Samaritans in captivity. But when Israel regained its land and rebuilt the temple, all the old animosity sprang up, and the Samaritans were still on the outside. The Samaritans were not allowed to help rebuild the temple, and the Samaritans could not come near the temple. But as I said before, Luke knew that the Samaritans and the other Hebrews were descended from the same Davidic line. That is the line of David. Being an outsider himself, Luke might have thought how ironic that in this faith that he studied and to which he had converted, even some of those who were historically children of the promise, who were insiders because of something that happened way in the past that somebody couldn't forgive, were now considered by other insiders to be outsiders. So according to the Gospel of Luke, in this story, in this pericope that Annette read for us, 10 lepers approached Jesus all together saying, "Master, have mercy on us." Lepers are people who have skin disfigurations. They have skin blemishes, scarred skin. Even though the condition of leprosy is easily treatable with medicine in the 21st century, during Jesus' time it was not, and it was thought to be highly contagious. They treated lepers, other people treated lepers the way we treat those who have a bad cold. Stay away. Or ringworm, don't come near me. Or HIV. Also, leprosy was thought to be an outward sign of God's inward disfavor. If God was displeased with you, God had outwardly marked you and disfigured your skin. Your inward sin showed on your outward body, on your outside. It was part of your marking. You can see that during Jesus' time there was not a clear line between illness and sin, or between physical healing and salvation. So in this story, Jesus does not create a salve by spitting in the sand or making a holy pronouncement. Jesus simply looks at the 10 lepers and says, "Go show yourselves to the priests." You see, priests were the ones who could look at your skin and say that your sin was forgiven. As Annette read for us, the scripture says that as the lepers went, their skin condition cleared up. Now, many preachers may tell you that Luke is weaving a story of 9 ungrateful former lepers, but I would like to humbly suggest to you that the 9 were people of faith. By faith, the lepers came to Jesus saying, "Master, have mercy on us." When Jesus said to them, "Go show yourselves to the temple priests," even though the leper's skin was not immediately cleared up, by faith, They went on their way to do as the master bid. Because, like mustard seed that we talked about last week, that is the nature of faith, surrendering to the process. As they journeyed by faith and found that they were cleansed, all the more reason to continue on their way to see the priest, the head of their social and religious community, because Jesus had answered their prayer. That is what the Master had told them to do. They prayed, they believed, they were obedient, they were cleansed, they obeyed, they were faithful to the command of the Master. But Luke makes the point that one came back, and he was a Samaritan. I say to you, well, why wouldn't he come back? Even though he had come along with the others, an outcast, asking in faith, even though Jesus gave him an order, a directive to go show himself to the priest, on his way to show himself to the priest, even as he was made clean, perhaps at that moment of cleanliness, he became aware that he would not be welcome in that community that scorned outsiders. He was a Samaritan. He realized the temple authorities were not welcoming Samaritans. Luke writes concerning the birth of Jesus that the three wise men came in faith and had an invitation to stop by Herod's palace on the way back. But being warned, they returned another way. The Samaritan had been warned. He knew he would not be welcome. Perhaps the glory of this story is that this 10th leper, this Samaritan, came back to show himself to the only priest he knew, the only priest he had ever experienced. He came back to thank the only one who would welcome him in and rejoice with him over the miracle that had occurred over his body. Perhaps he got who Jesus really was. When Jesus exclaimed that we're not 10 made clean, where are the other 9? Jesus, like the leper, was crying out to God, crying out that a miracle had occurred here. Their outsides had cleared up, and there is no returning to the old way, a community that was rotting from the inside out because they had rules about who was accepted and who was not. And so they themselves were physically healed for a time, but they were returning to death. They were going to try to take up their routine lives living in a community that had sent them away and said, you're not welcome anywhere. You're not welcome here. But they were recipients of a miracle. They needed to find a new priest, and they were already in his presence. Faith that results in miracles answered can be more than restorative. Faith that results in miracles answered can be transformative. I suspect April will be different having gone through this. There was a time when the Western world renounced Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali, because of his Muslim stance when America was fighting a war. He was stripped of his title, and he was thrown out of society. There was a time when Michael J. Fox was regarded as another cute actor on TV and in the movies, and nobody took his happy little Republican TV character very seriously. But both men used their Parkinson's diagnosis to create a community of love and higher intelligence and understanding around themselves, perhaps more profound than they had ever experienced as an actor or a prize fighter. Their physical healing perhaps never occurred in the way that they would have liked for it to happen, but their lives were changed and their transformation was and is beyond question. One in death and the other in life has been an inspiration and a hope for families all over the world, raising money and creating communities that never existed before. When Jesus said to the Samaritan, "Get up and go on your way, your faith has made you well," he is looking down through eternity and telling you and telling me there is a difference between just having the outside fixed, because you all know that these outsides are only here for a while, and then running back to your community as if nothing has changed, and having the outside fixed, and realizing that all the way down to the depths of our souls, everything is changed. The way I look at life is different. The way I make eye contact is different. The way I engage in conversation is different. Everything is different. God's love is not just for insiders. God's love is for me, regardless of what I have done, regardless of whom I love, regardless of whom my people may be. Nothing is the same. Jesus touches these people who had no faith community and lets them know there really is a difference between physical healing and salvation. All of you have beautiful skin today, every single one of you. I know I've been looking all during the service. And many of your beautiful skins are adorned with your red t-shirts today. I urge you to wear those shirts, not just to church today for one last time. Like Little White Chapel is an inside club, and if you don't have a red t-shirt, you don't fit in. But I urge you to wear these red t-shirts every time you think about it. Michael said, "Are you ever going to wear a tie to church again?" Wash those red t-shirts until they make your pants pink. These shirts say, "Start a conversation with me," not about the closed organization I belong to, which welcomes some and shuns others. Your shirt says, "Ask me about Little White Chapel, the church on the corner where all are welcome. Let me tell you about my faith story and the story of others like me. Samaritan or not, you are welcome over here at Little White Chapel. You are welcome over here at Little White Chapel. No one will judge you or send you away or force you to follow some old-fashioned rule of conduct. Come to Little White Chapel and pursue your healing and your salvation." Help us to realize that your touch on us has changed us, and we can never go back to the way we were. We can never be the people we were before we encountered you. Help us to continue to show ourselves ever new to new priests and new people, and take your message, your real message of inclusion and welcome outside of this sanctuary. Help us continue during these next 75 years to make Little White Chapel a place of welcome.